The following is an America Matters media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
This is not America. Sha-la-la-la-la. Little piece of you.
Hey, welcome to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor, and I'm here with my other unindicted co-conspirators, Leland Faegre and Shanima Lawson on the board.
It won't be long. They're coming after all of us.
Yeah. So, well, at least we're here. I guess we survived Juneteenth, huh? There was quite a bit of violence marking the new holiday.
It's a lot poorer, though. $600 billion holiday
Yeah.
to celebrate an identity.
Yes. And, you know, I mean, we do have some holidays that we can align with as the original founding nation, founders of the nation. July 4th, of course, is a good one.
But how much does this one depreciate from the Independence Day holiday?
Yeah. Well, slavery was a thing. I'm going to grant him that. And it's not.
But does anybody deny
It's not
that?
the worst reparation we could make, if you want to consider it a reparation, because we've been doing reparations for decades now.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a feel-good thing. It's also, I heard that they have federal employees have 11 holidays compared to 8 in the private sector. But I also heard that they have 44 days that they can take off without pay, like with pay. I mean,
With about 6 weeks worth of holidays.
Yeah,
Paid holidays.
paid days off. I don't know what that encompasses, but that's a lot more than the private sector does. But so we're
A
there.
lot more.
There are servants, though, right?
I always felt like Labor Day was a work day for me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in the hospitality industry here, it often is because
What holidays do they get? You know? By the way, the biggest jump in Nevada unemployment numbers, was in that sector. About 2% went back to work in May.
In the hospitality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I know American Airlines, for example, they got $10 million, promised not to lay off workers, and then as soon as the deadline came, they laid off the workers, and now they're complaining that they have no workers and they want them to work for nothing,
And
to
they're-
volunteer.
They're not the only airline that's
No.
suffering under those circumstances.
No. Well, you know, and then last week I wore my It's Okay to Be White t-shirt.
Yeah, I
you
remember
know?
that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So afterwards, I went to my chiropractor, and yeah, he was adjusting me when I was on my stomach, and then I rolled over so he could adjust my neck, and he couldn't do it. He started laughing. I just read your shirt. It's okay to be white.
Because it's on the back side of the shirt?
No, it's on the front side,
the
but
front
I
side.
was on
I
was
see.
on my front, and he rolled me over on the back. And then another woman that day, she walked up to me and vigorously shook my hand as an older woman and said, "I just came from Mason, Georgia. If I wore that shirt there, I'd be shot." And it's simply an innocuous statement. Is it
it
okay
is.
to be white?
Yeah.
Who knows?
There's nothing biased about it.
No, but it triggers people. It makes people on the right laugh, but it triggers the left.
Yeah, I know it makes me laugh.
So we're going to be talking a little bit more about this because Charles Murray just released a book, and I was waiting for it. It's $10 on Kindle if you're interested, called Facing Reality. And in one of the new segments later on, we're going to be talking about what the reality is that he would like us to face.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious.
So then what else did we have? Well, the Senate turned down, managed to block, with the help of Senators Manchin and Sinema, they managed to block the federalization of election
The
bills.
procedural vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, of course, the vice president said that it's only the beginning, and I'm sure it is. They always come back.
Well, Kamala said it was just the beginning as well. So.
Isn't she the vice president?
I think she is. There she is now.
Yeah, fresh from her trip to the not border.
Yeah, from somewhere else. Yeah, it's always from somewhere else.
Yeah. The well, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Putin and Biden summit, because there's something there that I've discovered, and some people are talking about it, but not many. But it looks like we just may have admitted defeat as far as the Obama era initiatives, let's call it that, initiatives against Russia.
I would attest that that's also correct. That's a proper analysis, because they've reverted to the mean, haven't they?
Yes.
They've gone right back to the way it was.
Well, the fact is that the summit was called primarily because of fears of Russia's new weapons, and that in order to bring about stability in the relationship between the U.S. and Russia.
But that didn't get a lot of attention, that part of it.
No. And Biden, was all fumbly at G7, and then he came to Geneva, and he did appear to be, for the most part, more together. And Putin refused to say that he was demented. He said, maybe it's because he thinks that there's some possibility of an actual rapprochement between the two countries, and he didn't want to downplay the fact that Biden may have been demented when he went there. But, so he seemed to suggest that Biden was on top of it, but it was only 3 hours, not 5.
Well, he knows that it's an establishment arranged kind of a conference, so he knows his place.
Right.
Otherwise he would stumble and fall himself, so he's too savvy for that.
But the interesting thing is that the military brass of both countries was present in Geneva, and if it was a purely political meeting, they probably didn't have to be there. But if it was to signify that there's a new policy regarding the Ukraine and Syria and other matters, then it would make sense that the military would be there, because there's an awful lot of protocols that would have to be worked out.
Yeah, I think these things could go on without any kind of stage at all.
Mm-hmm.
They could be done behind the scenes.
Right.
With a phone call or this or that.
Well, we'll be back.
Barbecue, the Butcher's Kitchen, would like to thank every customer for your loyalty and continued support.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back. It's Talking Truth to Power, and I'm your host, Brendan Trainor, my co-host, Leland Faegre. Do you remember the Magnitsky sanctions that Obama were laid on Russia?
Doesn't ring a bell.
All right.
Yeah.
There's a hedge fund manager named William Browder who claimed that Russia tried to rob him, and they put his lawyer in prison and murdered him in prison. And so that started off all the sanctions. Now, this William Browder, he is no longer an American citizen. He renounced his U.S. citizenship. His grandfather was Earl Browder, the head of the Communist Party USA during the 30s
and
40s.
that
I
name,
knew you would know it.
That name really stood out.
Yes. And it turns out that, fact checkers, all say that Magnitsky was not his lawyer, but merely an accountant. And he was not actually murdered, but he did die of a heart disease in a Russian prison, which, I wouldn't go to a Russian prison to get adequate health care.
You wouldn't?
No, I wouldn't. But anyway, so that started off snowballing all the sanctions. Then we had the provocations in Georgia in 2008. We had the coup in the Ukraine in 2014. We had the Skripal poisoning affair. And we had the shooting down of Malaysian airline MH17. Mm-hmm. We had Russiagate regarding Trump. Now we have the Navalny affair regarding Navalny and Belarus, the coup in Belarus, and what an evil person, Lukashenko is. So, what is is all this going to be unwound? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No,
they'll
it's going to take a
pile them
while.
up. They'll keep piling them up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then as far as the arms race, George W. Bush walked away from the anti-ballistic missile treaty in 2002, and he doubled down on Reagan's Star Wars anti-missile system, and that was supposed to be deployed in Alaska, even though it never tested that well, and that was supposed to be able to block any missiles, and hopefully then it would start an arms race, and Russia would collapse like it did, earlier under Gorbachev. But Russia said,
"Wait a minute! It had already collapsed a decade before."
Yeah, exactly. So they were hoping to repeat what they did to Gorbachev, or what they thought they did to Gorbachev. But anyway, Russia said, "Fine, you want to concentrate on defenses to ensure you can survive a retaliatory strike should you launch at us, because a defense system is not really defensive. I mean, we could issue a first strike and wipe out 90% of Russia, and then they would only be able to send a certain amount of missiles our way, and then Star Wars could hopefully take them out. And, it's a Dr. Strange-Glovian scenario.
It is, definitely, yeah.
But that's what you have to plan for. So Russia said, we're not gonna play your game and work on defense. We're gonna work on actual offensive weapons that can counterattack your missile defense. So that's where they came up with the hypersonic missiles, including the Avangard glider, which we haven't figured out how to do yet, because it can skim on top of the atmosphere. Once it's launched from a missile, it's like a glider that can skim on top of the atmosphere and withstand the heat that comes from that, and circle around the planet and launch an attack from any direction except through Alaska. So they turned the defense system into a Maginot Line.
Right.
So, but we're hoping, though, it does appear that Biden, who once was the shadow president of the Ukraine, that they're losing interest in the Ukraine. And hopefully they're losing interest in Syria too.
Well, it's an economic disaster.
Yes, it is.
It has only strategic value. There's no economic value to it.
So,
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
We're not.
No, we're not. So, sometimes, what one party tries to do, like what Trump tried to do, Biden might be able to do it because his party won't object as strenuously to one of their own people doing it.
Right, it's because Biden is doing it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We've seen that already.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, we have always been at war with Eurasia.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to make Orwell fiction again.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Bring it back. Just nostalgia.
So, there's just another thing I would like to say, that I just want to express my total disgust with U.S. Republicans, who for 4 years were literally hounded by the U.S. media for Trump's alleged caving into Putin, or even being a Manchurian candidate put in power by Putin. But now the Republicans are doing the exact same thing. They're using the exact shame language, accusing Biden of weakness and caving into Putin. So the Dems and the Republicans once again are exposed as nothing more like Coke and Pepsi. Different labels, same product, especially in foreign affairs.
Co-globalists.
Co-globalists, exactly. And they all of these politicians place their petty interests above the well-being of the United States and its people. And both parties are acting like traitors to the U.S. and its people.
I'm not sure why you'd want to live anywhere close to the District of Columbia.
I know, exactly. Well, I've been there several times, and you have
Is it the Washington Monument? It's the Washington Monument.
You have the terrible metro system, and you have the large percentage of blacks, which is a problem in some cases, and you also have just the corruption that you deal with. It's probably the most corrupt place on earth right now, based on its power and its magnitude of its what it can do.
It's springtime on the Potomac, isn't it? That's the attraction.
and another thing,
because even when I was running for Congress,
yes,
I thought, not that there was any chance in hell I was going to be elected, but
right.
But the idea of living in D.C. didn't appeal to me.
No.
And yet that's what would be required. So what would attract people of our thinking, to actually live there?
Unless you commute by plane every weekend and write it off,
Still, those 5 days, that would get awfully monotonous.
Exactly. And another thing I wanted to mention is that there was an interview with James Corden. He was interviewed by Aaron Mate, who's been in the local news, not local news, but YouTube news lately. But at any rate, Corden is a former State Department official, and he's a protege of the late Professor Cohen. And he has written for The Nation and for the American Conservative. But what's interesting is that during the interview, he danced around. It was worse than Tucker Carlson. He tried to say outright what he was trying to say, but he just couldn't.
Couldn't get it out.
No, it couldn't get out. So he talked about all the people of the diaspora who have a hatred of the country they were born in, or because of perceived injustices their parents or grandparents suffered in Russia.
Someone would really have to be closely understanding all of that in order to get any sort of
right. But
interpretation.
Still, it took a certain amount of guts even to put that obliquely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very clear to us what he was referring to.
Yeah, but he did manage to mention Masha Gessen. Or Gessen. She's a prominent writer for The New Yorker and Vanity Fair, those type of New York intellectual magazines. And she's Russian Jewish and LGBTQ. And her pronouns are they and their. So they said on a video after the summit that
they did?
Yeah, they did. That the Russians don't care about human life. And all I have to say is the Talmud says the Goyim are not human. Maybe that's why. Or maybe Russia-hating diaspora Jews can spew racist tropes without any consequence. She wrote a book on Putin. It's called The Man Without a Face, The Unlikely Rise of Vladimir Putin. So that's the type of...
I wonder why she would describe it as the unlikely rise.
Because he wasn't on anybody's radar. Yeltsin was in charge.
Yeah.
And then they put this unknown former KGB agent who had been vice mayor of St. Petersburg, and they put him in Yeltsin's cabinet, but nobody thought anything of it until they decided that he was the guy that would take over after Yeltsin.
Well, I understand that, but I don't think if you're on the inside, it came as any surprise to anyone.
Well,
on that side,
nobody knew Putin at that time.
They
really.
did.
Well, maybe. Maybe
That's
they did.
how he ended up there.
Maybe they did, but the vice mayor of St. Petersburg, the mayor of St. Petersburg was probably neoliberal, and his being vice president, he probably didn't do anything that really stood out at the time, but nobody knew how independent he would actually be.
Well, in my musical ensembles, I could always play the lead guitar parts.
Yeah.
But I would always let the lead guitarist do the parts.
Sure.
And I would just play the rhythm and let him take the spotlight. I think Yeltsin's the same type of person.
Yeltsin? You mean Putin?
Putin.
Yeah. Yes. That he is. I mean, he's self-effacing.
Yeah.
He.
That's why I think he ingratiates himself with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Establishment types.
Yeah, he's like Lukashenko. Lukashenko sometimes goes out at night and walks the streets of Minsk, according to the stories. And Putin is like that. He just got a limousine, but before that, he would drive his own car, maybe have one security car behind him. He would go visit people without a big entourage, you know.
Wants to have a real life.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have any family working for the government in the Kremlin.
You know, the political left has slammed Miranda for not apologizing enough. Did you hear about this?
No.
You didn't hear about it?
No, Miranda?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kevin Campbell, owner of Dynamic Diesel. Thanks to our customers and vendors over 13 years, we are once again growing and expanding. That being said, we need light and heavy line mechanics, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, paid holidays, health insurance, and a generous 401k available.
Hi, this is Eddie Floyd. Let me tell you about my favorite non-profit public charity, Wainema Wild Horse Sanctuary, located on the Forsythe Ranch in Hallelujah Junction area. And please go to www.wainemaranch.com. That's WYNEMA ranch.com.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now, back to the show.
Well, anyway, it looks like Miranda hasn't apologized enough.
Who is Miranda?
I have no idea. But it was all over Fox and Friends this morning. I just thought you might know who it is.
Well, what I want to know is what's happening in Colombia, our neighbor to the south.
Me too.
After all, now that we're no longer trying to control Eurasia and win the game of Risk, we are knee deep in Central and South America, although we won't admit it. But we had all the scorn heaped on Venezuela, but now because it's a socialist country, obviously, and it was falling apart.
I saw Elliot Abrams yesterday on Fox. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. He's back?
Yeah.
Looking as dapper as ever?
Some might think so. I just look at him as a relic of a different age.
Yes, he is.
Just CFR all the way.
Uh-huh.
There's your big club.
That's right. Well, anyway, so the Colombian government is neoliberal, not socialist. And they are our biggest ally in all of South America. And they've been racked with protests and police repression for the last month. And the U.S. media is largely silent. We're not getting a whole lot of information about it. But what we can piece together is that the government tries to raise taxes, almost like Macron in France, gas taxes, taxes that would impact the poor.
Average people.
Yeah. And also to weaken the Colombian healthcare system. And that's what led to the demonstrations. But underneath the demonstrations, so they eventually withdrew the tax proposals, but the demonstrations continued. And the Colombian president, Ivan Duque, is authoritarian. He's accused of using death squads in the rural areas. Now, there used to be revolutionaries in the countryside called FARC, F-A-R-C.
Yeah, right.
And they gave up after a long struggle and surrendered their arms. But now, according to human rights workers, they're being systematically assassinated by death squads, even though they surrendered.
Death squads in South America?
In South America. Who would have thought? Yeah. So Colombia is also America's biggest partner in the war on Ukraine that we're trying so hard to win. But meanwhile, and of course nobody's talking about it. Socialism bad, neoliberalism always good.
Yeah. Always good.
Always good. And then just to the south in Peru, another heavy cocaine country, although Colombia, I think, took over the leadership in that area. But a left-wing candidate was just elected. So I think the coup has probably already begun.
Hold the phone. You're saying a left-wing candidate was elected in Peru?
Yes.
Oh, my God. That's shocking.
Yeah. So Pedro Castillo, he's a university professor, and his opponent is named Keiko Fujimori. Now, Keiko is the daughter of a previous president, Alberto Fujimori. Now, Alberto...
Yeah, that name rings a bell.
Yeah, Alberto started strong by defeating the Shining Path, which was violent Marxist guerrillas, more violent than FARC, I understand. But his term in office ended under a cloud of corruption and human rights abuses. Shocking. In fact, he's already serving a 25-year prison term for murder and other crimes. Now, Miss Fujimori herself could face a long prison term if she's not elected. But if she's elected, she'll pardon both her father and herself. So it was a very close election, like 51 to 49. So she's already trying to appeal to the Organization of American States.
Wasn't election fraud, was it?
That's what she's trying to say, yeah. I think. I mean, that's...
Like we have here.
Yeah.
Shut up.
That's... So, you know, and the Organization of American States intervened in Uruguay and managed to stall the election there for a year, but finally it was restored to the proper winner. But so apparently they may try to do the same thing in Peru. Now, what's going on in that part of South America? Well, it's very rich in rare earth minerals like lithium, which many are calling the new oil, as our infrastructure becomes more dependent on battery power.
And they're targeting that as a source of pollution.
Yes.
Big issue for the
left?
For the climate
change
left.
Where their lithium would also pollute?
Right.
The mining, I think, of it.
And the mining of it. Yeah.
I think that's the main, not lithium itself, I don't think. It's the mining of the lithium.
Yeah, it's not clear to me, but...
Yeah. Strip mining or whatever they were trying to say, probably.
I went into Rayleigh's for a couple of lithium batteries the other day. Does that count?
It's all part of the plan.
So, if Castillo does manage to hold on to the office, it is expected he will attempt land reform and some kind of nationalization of mining and agriculture and try to kick some of the big corporations out, which may or may not help. We don't know yet, but at least the people think it'll help, and they deserve a chance, I think, to try it.
As long as they don't have any issues with their elections.
Right.
Like we do here.
In other elections, in Iran, with the lowest turnout in the history of the Islamic Republic, the favored candidate of Ayatollah Khamenei won. His name is Iman Raisi, or Iramin Raisi. I'm sorry if I don't know Farsi that well. But he has a reputation as a hanging judge from Qom, the Shia holy city. You know, Iran doesn't chop heads off like Saudi Arabia, but they do hang a lot of people.
They do hang a lot of people.
Say what?
So it is expected that this is going to help the Iranian Revolutionary Guard because of the assassination by Donald Trump of General Soleimani. The Revolutionary Guard, is growing in power. But what exactly that means, we don't know at this point. Then we also had the election of Naftali Bennett in Israel.
Naftali.
And he cobbled together a coalition of the fringes. With one vote, he managed to oust Netanyahu, at least for now.
That's a precarious situation.
Yes, it
Israeli
is sure
parliament, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about parliaments all you like. They are the most fragile things.
It was like in Ireland when Sinn Féin tried to cobble together a coalition like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't usually work.
Because they're the factions.
I know.
And the more parties that exist, the more difficult it becomes to form some sort of majority. I mean, it is just a mess. No wonder the framers disregarded it.
Yeah, that's probably the main reason, right?
Nope.
So, one of the fringes that is an Arab party. Now, this is the first time in the history of Israel that an Arab party managed to get into a ruling coalition. but they're not from the West Bank or Gaza. They represent Bedouins, Bedouin Arabs south of the Dead Sea in what's called the Negev. So it's not expected that they will do a lot for the Palestinians, but at least symbolically, they're in the coalition, at least for now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the coalition could fall apart, like
tomorrow.
You said. Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah. So, and then in France, regional elections smashed Macron's party.
That was a shocker. For
Yes.
You, huh?
Now, these were regional elections, so Macron, was not on the ticket. But his party dropped down to 10%.
I think he's about halfway through his term, right? It's a good
No,
thing.
there's going to be elections in the fall.
6-year terms, right?
Yeah, but there'll be elections
So
in the
are we
fall.
already 6 years through his
I
term?
guess so.
Wow.
But I understand there's elections in the fall.
Wow. We'll say goodbye right now.
Let's bitch slap him the next time we see him.
Excellent! We can do it from afar.
So Naftali Bennett is called a murderous fascist by the left, and we'll just say hardliner for the time being.
Okay.
And then, so we'll see what he does regarding the Palestinians. We just don't know. But we had already moved on to France. I'm sorry. I lost my notes here. But Marine Le Pen, was not able to take advantage because her party only earned 20% and only actually won in the provinces where she's strongest in the south of France. Like
I wonder
Marseille.
why the percentage of the vote didn't go to her more than that anyway.
Well, there's speculation. We're going to get into it. Who got the largest amount was the conservative Republican Party candidate, who is probably a faux Gaullist.
A Gaullist, yeah. They want to go back.
Yeah, he's probably a phony Gaullist, because
Right.
Marine Le Pen is the real Gaullist.
Right.
He's probably just a more conservative banker candidate. Like Macron was a liberal banker candidate. He's probably just a conservative banker candidate. But he's gonna say that he's a populist and he's for the people.
The
and
French
all
are
that.
nostalgic for that time. They want to go back to that time.
It seems to me
I would like to go back to JFK if you want to.
Yeah.
So
Well, it was for reduced taxes.
Analysts that I am familiar with are saying that Marie may have tried too hard to win over moderate voters with an eye on the prize in September to beating Macron. But in the process, she may have watered down her message just a little too much.
God, it just seems like the French elections were yesterday. Doesn't seem that long ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I keep hearing that the elections are in September,
Yeah.
and the regional elections come first.
You know, speaking of fraudulent elections, Trump has released a statement this morning that says that the elections were very fraudulent, then teases 2024 or before.
Did you know that 4,000 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field was 5 Gauss? Over the last 165 years, scientists have measured the Earth's magnetic field and found that today it is only 0.5 Gauss.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
And welcome back. It's Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor, and my co-host, Leland Faegre. So we've had a lot in the news about parents and local school boards rising up against critical race theory.
They're arresting him.
Yeah. You can't say that. No. So what I wanted to talk about regarding this is something that you're not going to hear too much, even on Fox News. But Charles Murray, remember him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of best-selling books, the most controversial being The Bell Curve.
The Bell Curve was very, very popular.
And then Losing Ground and other books like that on sociology. But the critical race theory and wokeness is based on the idea that the races are equal. There is no difference. It is simply a social construct, any difference between the races. There are some unimportant secondary characteristics like, skin color, obviously, shape of the features on the face and so on. But basically, the races are exactly equal. And Ibrahim Kendi, he's the main spokesman for critical race theory. So
does Al Sharpton know this?
Yes. But if he is, then Charles Murray is the last man standing to oppose him, because over the last several decades, those who believe that race is simply a social construct have poured billions of dollars and all kinds of legal schemes like affirmative action. They tried busing, No Child Left Behind, new math, anything but phonics, to try to improve black and Hispanic test scores, and they have essentially failed to budge. According to Kendi and people who think like him, if the races are equal in ability, but remedial efforts have not worked, then the reason must be systemic racism.
What else is left?
Yeah. If blacks cannot pass tests, the tests must be racist. Mm-hmm. Math is racist. History, science, the entire structure of Western civilization must be racist.
They don't know where to go to get the driver's licenses.
Yeah.
It's all racist. We don't want them to drive. It's just.
I know. So if Western civilization is racist, then there must be, then there is no other solution except wokeness. We have to all be woke. But people like Charles Murray, Gordon Peterson is another one. He's worked with IQ studies. And these scientists that are known as evolutionary psychologists have another grimmer explanation. And that is black people simply, on average, have lower median cognitive ability as measured now by decades of IQ tests than white people. President Biden can say black kids are just as good as poor kids or whatever he said, But the science says, wait a minute. And nobody wants to talk about this. Liberals deny the reality because wokeness is based on the alternate theory, and conservatives are afraid to admit it. Now, the other problem that Murray brings up in his new book called Facing Reality, available for $10 on Kindle, is that black people, especially young black males, are also more prone to violence than whites or Hispanics. Like 15 times more likely to commit a violent crime than white people. Hispanics probably more like 5 times more likely. I think most of those are Caribbean Hispanics. But at any rate, low IQ correlates with aggression.
Are there liquor stores in the neighborhood?
Yeah. Low IQ correlates with aggression, as it is harder for a person of lower cognitive ability to see the future consequences of their actions. Or, as a lot of cops on the beat in black neighborhoods say, poor impulse control. But whichever way you want to say.
Are they saying that up in Portland?
Yeah.
Whatever, I'll do what I want.
That's right.
Now, even school choice cannot ultimately solve the problem of inherent differences in ability. Yes, school choice is good. I'm all for it. It gives parents more control, and the level of interpersonal teaching of the students is much better than in public schools, but a cup can only be filled so much. Now, on the individual level, how we interrate with the black people that we are liable to meet in our community, our co-workers, our neighbors, this does not change much. There are millions of black people, let me emphasize this, there are millions of black people who are smarter than millions of white people. It's just that there are more blacks distributed in the lower end of the cognitive spectrum based on their population. This results in lower test scores and grades than other races and ethnicities. Again, remedial things like having both parents at home, that's very important.
Very important.
Yes. But you got to admit that black women can be a strong matriarchy if they have to. Mm-hmm. proper nutrition when young can also help with IQ scores. But scientists...
How about that school lunch program?
Exactly. But scientists like Charles Murray and Gordon Peterson and other cognitive psychologists think the cognitive gulf is just too wide to breach. Now, let's go over the IQ again. We have a few more minutes. Caucasians are in the statistical mid-range of cognitive ability. So we're designated as 104 IQ on average. Caucasians commit a fair share of violent crimes, but like I said, the violent crime rate for Caucasians is much less than Hispanics and much, much less than it is for black people. Asian, now you're going to accuse us of being white supremacists, but it's not true. Asians are more intelligent on average than white people. I understand I've heard people that say, in the comments box, I have no statistical studies, but they say if you go to China and live in China for a while, you don't have to use a business card. You just tell people your Chinese people your contact information, and they remember it like that, because they are, on average, more intelligent than white people. Ashkenazi Jews are the most intelligent ethnicity, and they commit almost no violent crimes if you dismiss the Jewish mafia and the Mossad. But basically, Jewish people commit almost no violent crime. However, we like to keep in mind, just anecdotally, that Jews commit 30% of white-collar crimes.
But they don't like us.
Yeah, exactly. So it's on the social level, not the individual level. We still absolutely must treat every individual that we meet as an individual. But on the social level, when you're trying to figure out what to do about the social problems, these racial differences become important to understand. We can't just dumb down society to correct what is largely biological determined. It's not a viable solution, and as parents are finding out, it rebounds negatively on us, on Caucasians and Asians, for with no scientific basis.
So statutory equity is not going to work, is what you're saying?
You're right, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Equity, no matter what you do, you can't make up the differences. And I know this is highly controversial, and I don't even know how many mainstream outlets are going to review Charles Murray's latest book, because they don't want to talk about it.
But this information has been in the American lexicon for many years. Mm-hmm. He's put it together here in this fine work, it sounds like.
Right.
But we've known about this.
Well, it's not a big book. You can read it in a day or two if you'd like, but it's basically a summary, because it's 20 years later after he wrote The Bell Curve, and nothing has changed.
Yeah, that's right. He's been absent from the media for a long, long time.
Right.
Part of the discussion.
But it's just so politically incorrect. We don't know if anybody is going to even discuss it.
Except here on Talking Truth to Power.
Yeah, except for Talking Truth to Power, and those who are aware of it and who have suffered for espousing similar beliefs, been canceled or sent to the netherworld of the dark web or whatever. So and so that's why we're going through all this Maoist critical self-criticism exercises and cancellation.
And parents getting arrested. That's just hard to take, isn't it?
Right.
They've handed us the next election. These people.
I know. I hope so.
They've made it so easy for us.
Yes, it seems like so. We still have a ways to go.
Apparently, Kamala Harris there's a report that she's finally going to go to the border. I'm seeing it now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Trump is trolling the story, apparently. I haven't read what he's put out, but it looks like she's finally going there. Time's run out.
Will she stand outside the cages with the kids and weep like AOC did?
Well, she'll laugh. That's all she knows how to do, is to laugh. Yeah, like that, just right there.
That's it.
That's it.
Well, We've done our bit to disseminate the information of the week today.
All around the world.
All around the world.
50,000 watts of truth here in northern Nevada and northern California. And around the world on the internet. And you can watch us on Facebook and YouTube. Did you hear that Joe Biden may have accidentally paid for a hunter's wild night at the Chateau Marmont, including a $25,000 Russian hooker?
Huh.
Shocking.
That's where Belushi died, the Chateau Marmont.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was just an accident.